Morning. My name is Mike Hagoski, and I'm here to talk about calling, my calling. I have attended this church since I was 3 years old. And I will be 70 this September. So I'm not the sharpest tack, the smartest guy, but I've seen a few things. And I don't know. I think hopefully that qualifies me to say something. I'd just like to first off just start and comment about calling. A calling on your life, a calling on my life, a calling of people to do certain things, the calling of God. Hopefully that's where you recognize it comes from, the calling of God upon your life to do something. So one thing I've learned and observed in life, and in my life especially, is you are what you are before you become what you are. I learned this right here at this church, going to discipleship, men's discipleship, and then co-ed discipleship, and now it's called Lighthouse University. How I learned it is that I was just one of the church members. I was just one of the people that sat in the pews out there and listened to the sermons and didn't have much to say, didn't do much, and just kind of lived my life. And as I got more and more involved in the church, got involved in people's lives, one day, out of the blue, someone said, "Pastor Mike." It shocked me because nobody had ever called me pastor. Nobody had ever decreed me a pastor. Pastor Rob had never said, "Okay, you're Pastor Mike." Somebody just up and called me Pastor Mike. And that's what kind of provoked this thought in my mind. You are what you are before you become what you are. I had been a pastor, but I didn't know it. It wasn't soon after that I really did become a pastor. With the title given to me. So, another way of putting this is, I am what I do and what I'm called to do. If you do, you are called by what you do. What I did was I acted like a pastor, so I was called a pastor. I am what I do. Are you what you do? Are you being called by what you do? I'm sure you are. You're an artist. You're a pastor. You're a cabinet maker. You're this. You're that. But is it your calling? Are you called by what you do in your calling? Another thing that I found that so many people are lost. And I think that this is a common phrase. You might just look at somebody and not think exactly those words, but think, this person's so lost. How many people have you talked to? How many people have you seen just through observation and thought they were lost, said to yourself, this person is really lost? How many times have you maybe said to yourself, I'm lost. I don't know where I'm going. We have to find ourselves. This is something that I've discovered in my own life. You have to find yourself. You have to find out who you are and what you're going to do. So many people give up. So many people don't even try. Some people really go for it. There's all kinds of people out there doing all kinds of different things in all kinds of different ways. The ones that are lost are the ones that are doing nothing. Don't do nothing. Find yourself. This is the first thing you need to do in your life. Jesus isn't the only one who is looking for you. Jesus isn't the only one looking for lost souls. People are looking for lost souls. The devil's looking for lost souls. And the things that people and the devil can do to you if you are lost and don't know where you're going, you're directionless, it's bad. Just look around. People destroy other people's lives. You can destroy your own life. The devil destroys lives. Find yourself. Find direction. Get a compass. Find you. I believe that the Lighthouse University can help you find yourself and find your calling. It certainly helped me. It can help you to find out who you are and who you're supposed to be. I think this is all a very spiritual thing. It's a very spiritual thing. It really has to do with God. It has to do with your relationship with God. I think those people that are the most successful, maybe they don't know God, but as I said yesterday, they follow biblical principles. Even if you don't know God, if you follow biblical principles, you will succeed. Here at the Lighthouse University, you will find people who are interested in what you are interested in. You will find people that will help you find your calling. And I believe that you'll find that finding your calling is an adventure. This is something that, this is one of the revelations that I've got here at Lighthouse University. This word adventure has loomed large in my life and my perspective on life. If you're not on an adventure, life is really boring. Looking and finding a calling keeps us from boredom and from the quiet life of desperation. My life has not been quiet, and I don't think it's been desperate. I've been on an adventure since day one. I like to believe that, and I think for the most part it's true. I believe that our calling is first and foremost an adventure. It's a risk. Just getting out of bed this morning was a risk. Anything could happen to you. I never slept in. As long as I can remember, I never slept in. Drove my mom nuts. I wanted to get onto the adventure. I wanted to get on and about life. I just couldn't stay in bed. I couldn't sleep. So what am I going to do? I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going on an adventure. As a little kid, whether it was just getting up and in the spring, we lived on a dead-end street, and as you went through the dead end, there was vacant land beyond the dead end. And one of the adventures was, when I was very little, was to go down there, and in the spring, the grass had come up, and the ground was very moist and damp, and we'd pull up the grass with a big dirt clod on the end, and we'd start chucking at each other. Big adventure. My whole life's been, I believe, just a great adventure. If you want to dwell on the negative, go for it. But I like to, I don't always, I'm not perfect at it, but I like to dwell on the adventures that I've been on. When I was young, through dirt clods. But one of the first adventures I remember is building model airplanes, and I lived on a hillside, and we would climb up the hillside behind the neighbor's house and throw the airplanes off the hillside. It was a nice steep slope, and our planes would go for miles. Not miles, but a long way. We'd build them. We started small and then built them bigger and bigger and bigger. That led to model airplanes, real model airplanes, and flying them. They would glide, and then I went to the gas engine airplanes that, the U-control, where you had them on the end of a string and you went around and around in a circle, and then that went on to radio control airplanes. Turns out that airplanes played a big part in my life. Flying played a big part in my life. But from airplanes, I went to the beach. My mom took me to the beach a lot, and then when I was about 12, she cut me loose. She said, "You can go. You can take off. You can do pretty much whatever you want." So I went to the beach. And I practically lived there, especially in the summer. I had boogie boarding, body surfing, surfing. Surfing took up a lot of my life. That ended up to be something of a calling. I was on a skateboard team. I was even on TV on my skateboard team on a show called Surf's Up, I think it was. It was on Channel 9. Snow skiing, water skiing, motorcycle racing, soaring, flying gliders, houseboating, air chairing, cycling, golfing, backpacked through New Zealand and the Sierras. I've done a lot of things. I've done a lot of things. Been on a lot of adventures, but they weren't all my calling. Golf. I played a lot of golf. I thought it might be my calling, but here's what I learned from golf. Sorry. You don't learn to play golf. It teaches you. And what it teaches you has nothing to do with golf. I played a lot of golf. I played a lot of golf with my pastor. I played a lot of golf with people in the church. I suppose it was something of a calling because it brought people together. I spearheaded a golf game most Saturdays for a year or two, and got a lot of people together, a lot of people to know each other a lot better, and we had a lot of fun. But it wasn't my calling. It was more frustrating than anything else. But this phrase about golf, and it teaches you. It can be said about a lot of things in life. Anything that you pursue. If you pursue it for the sheer sake of the game, so to speak. It's not going to be of any benefit to you. But I really believe that if you pursue something and allow God to work in your life through it, it can be a calling in that it will, well, like I said, what did I say? You don't learn to play golf. It teaches you, and what it teaches you has nothing to do with golf. You don't learn to play tennis. It teaches you. You don't learn to do anything. Hopefully, it's a lesson in life that you get from what you do. Like I said, this can be said of a lot of things that I've done. Soaring, like I said, flying turned out to be a big deal in my life. I think in the end it was a calling. I didn't see it as that, as just a passion that I had. When I first saw my first glider, my first sailplane, it was on TV. And it was, I think, a Disney movie, and it was about somebody who flew glider, and they flew distances, something that I never quite comprehended. And somehow this just captured my imagination. I finally learned how to fly gliders when I went to New Zealand. I didn't go there to fly gliders, but I went there because I had my former passion of surfing. I saw a lot of surf movies, saw that there was surf in Australia, and I just kind of followed my nose to Australia. But in between Australia and the United States was New Zealand. So I stopped off in New Zealand and backpacked around there a lot. I was there for many months, and I ended up in a town called Thames, and somebody had directed me there because they did flying. I thought, while I was there, I heard that people in New Zealand do a lot of glider flying. So I found an airport and a club that did soaring, and I learned how to fly the gliders. I could go on and on about soaring because it's such a passion, but I didn't realize it was a calling and something that God would use in my life in a big way. Not until 35 years later. I accumulated many hours flying gliders, came back to the States with a wife from New Zealand, continued to fly, but realized that I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. The wife would get upset at me being gone all day. I did have kids. Kids were coming along. Business to run. Generally speaking, just life got in the way. And so I had to give it up. So, how do I know it was a calling? Well, I retired. After life, I got a little bit of life out of the way. And I retired, and I just woke up one day and I thought, I can go soaring. I can fly again. I'm free. The kids were gone. And how did I know it was this is real? Pay attention to this. How do you know it's a calling in your life? How did I know soaring was a calling in my life? After being beaten down and hammered by my wife for soaring, she said, "Well, sure. Why don't you go soaring?" That sounds like God to me. So I took it up again. And it's not like riding a bicycle. You just don't hop back into the glider and pedal away. So I had to learn pretty much all over again. There was a lot to learn. So that was my wife was one of the first things that told me, hey, it's okay to go soaring. And then I asked my pastor, I said, soaring is really a selfish thing, Pastor Rob. It's kind of nodded, yeah. And I said, but, do you think I should go for it? And without hesitation, she said, yeah. Yeah, if that's what you love to do, yeah, do it. So that was the number 2 indication that I had a calling. The third reason that I remember it for being, the third reason I remember as to being my calling was that my son was lost. My son Tex, lost in the sauce, lost in the world, didn't know what to do. Tex, what are you going to do? I don't know. Tex, what are you going to do? I don't know. Tex, you got to do something with your life. I don't know what I'm going to do with I don't know what to do with my life. So one day I said, well, Tex, why don't you come soaring with me? Come take a flight in the glider. He said, okay. So I took him, and I don't know what was right then and there, but very soon after he got his first glider ride, he came up to me and he goes, Dad, I know what I want to do. I want to fly. I want to become a pilot. I mean, if nothing else happened to confirm that this was a calling, that was it. That was something that was really special in my life, and I knew that God had given me the okey doke to go flying. Since then, he's gone on to get his. He's all the way up to. He's teaching now. He's teaching people how to fly. Just a really exciting time in my life. The other thing, one more thing I'll mention about soaring is, the other thing is, when I go soaring, I climb on that glider, and I know that I'm going to find God up there. May sound weird, may sound kind of dorky, but you know what? That's where I find God without fail. It's just a gift from God, a passion from God, and just something I love to do. And I just thank God every time that I'm able to do it, and I thank God for the results. I am able to witness to people out there, tell them, offer insight into their lives through biblical scripture, just helping people out in life. Anyway, another calling on my life was the houseboat. Another adventure. The first time that I went with a bunch of people. Went a couple of times, couple of years with some people, and it was just getting drunk and, then going water skiing, and then getting drunk again that night and going water skiing the next day and eating. But had a really good time, aside from the booze and stuff. Had a really good time. And it wasn't until years later that, again, it was one of those moments where you go, hey, let's go houseboating. It's probably a good 10 years after my first houseboat experience. And this time I took the pastor and his wife and my wife, and we had a great time. And so my first trip my first trips were with the pastor and people, a couple of people in the church, and then eventually, to confirm that it was a calling, now half the church goes, almost half the church. I think we had 30 people over 30 people on our last houseboating trip. 30 people in 3 houseboats. people just have a great time. People are asking me throughout the year, when are we going? Are we going again? Had such a great time. We have sermons there. We preach Wednesday night and Sunday nights that we're there. We have a great time. No booze. And I think that's the key to having a good time, personally. And I found my calling there. I found out that it came to me. God, I think, said to me, Mike, you're the pastor of recreation. So follow. Your passions don't always lead you to the right place, but give them a chance. Be willing to know when to give up and be willing to know when to pursue. And I've pursued a lot of things, and they have turned out not to be my passion. I think I may have said that. But this was one thing that I pursued, and it turned out to be a passion, and it turned out to be a calling from God. It just has enriched so many people's lives. Bicycling. Who would have thunk it? It was a calling on my life. I was manic about it. I mean, talk about getting up early. I couldn't get up early enough to get on my bike. And I got my pastor involved in riding bicycles. And he'll give you the testimony that bicycles saved his life. You couldn't stop me. We would, Pastor Rob and I would go for miles and miles and miles on the weekends, and whenever we could. Got into great shape. People got wind of, hey, Pastor Rob and Mike, or Pastor Mike are going cycling. Can we come too? And we got, at times we had quite a following. We got people fit. We got people off the couch. If you get people off the couch, that's a calling. We had a great time. One of our biggest adventures, and cycling was definitely an adventure. We would go to the Tucson Bible Conference every summer, every June, and one day I got one of those, hey, why don't we? And I told Pastor Rob, hey, Pastor Rob, why don't we cycle from Indio to the Colorado River? It's only 100 miles. And it's going to only be 105 degrees that day. So we did that for several years. People take notice of that kind of stuff, and it inspires them. I believe that it inspires them. And again, it inspired a lot of people. It inspired our pastor in Tucson, Pastor Harold Warner. He is a paraplegic, but he has strong arms, and he got on a hand cycle. And he I think, did he do 100 miles? Did he? Yeah, anyway, he went for it. I mean, and he would come here to Santa Monica specifically to cycle with us. And then people in his church, it just, spread like the coronavirus. A calling, a passion. Last story, I'll do it. Little more serious, but are you called? So I mentioned that we go to conference every year, and one year, several years ago, I went to conference and I answered an altar call, and I don't even know, I'm not sure what the altar call was, but I went up there and it was probably something like, do you want to be a pastor? Or do you come up and maybe God will call you, or come up and maybe God will talk to you, kind of thing. And I went up and I was praying, and I don't remember what I was praying, but I remember hearing a voice saying, Mike, you're going to be a pastor. And I distinctly remember crying out audibly, very audibly, oh no, not me, God. I'm the guy that hated, I went to Pastor Summers' home group, and it was there that I spoke up, Mike, they go around the circle, and Mike, how you doing, what's up, what's going on in your life, and I said, I hate people. I hate people. Not so much hate people, I just really uncomfortable around them. Just didn't like being around people. So, just to give you a little bit of background on, oh no, God, not me. I was the first one to leave church. People would ask my wife, what's the matter with that guy? Does he hate me? Well, probably. No. So, this is the guy that God's talking to, saying, Mike, I think, you might want to consider being a pastor. And oh, God, not me. So that kind of came and went. And then a year or two later, we were at conference, and right at the beginning of conference, Pastor Rob says, okay, Mike, you're involved in the church, you're ushering, you're doing this, you're doing that, you've come along. I suppose this is what he's thinking. He said, where do you think God's calling you to be? Where do you think God's calling you to plant a church specifically? I'm going, whoa. Slow down, Pastor Rob. But then I said, well, okay, I'll think about it. So I thought about it the whole week. And the answer that I got, I thought was a no answer. I thought that, I hadn't heard anything, but the answer that I got was I got a place to go. So I didn't talk to Pastor Rob about it at all the whole week. And in fact, because I didn't feel like I heard from God, I was going to leave early with my wife and Pastor Rob's wife, Jennifer. We were going to leave Friday afternoon and stay, instead of staying for the Friday night end of conference where people are sent out, people are announced as to where they want to go, where they've been wanting to go, and released to go there. So I was going to leave that Friday. So I went over to Pastor Rob's unit there in the hotel, and I went over just to say goodbye, and he was on the phone. And he paused for a minute on the phone, and he says, did you find out? Did you ask God where you wanted to go? Where you should go? And he, like I said, he was on the phone, and so I said, totally unprepared. I said, well, if I heard anything, it was Yale Street. Now, Yale Street's just over here on Yale Street and Santa Monica Boulevard, probably no more than 2 miles away from this church. And I thought that was a really safe answer, because there's no way I'm going to Yale Street, because the pastor there is planted. I mean, planted like in roots going 3 miles deep into the earth, kind of planted. Just a huge part of the church, huge part of the sports program, pastoring that church, involved in the things of this church. He's the principal of the school over there. The church doubles as a school over there. Just, 3 miles deep, roots. I said, safe call, Mike, good call. You're not going anywhere. He goes, Pastor Rob's on the phone, his jaw drops. He says, don't move, stay right there. Don't go anywhere, don't move. He finishes his conversation on the phone. He's actually talking to a pastor, asking him to take this church because George has decided to move on. George Neos has decided to move on. He's going to pull up those 3-mile deep roots and move on. I didn't know that at the time. So Pastor Rob's jaw drops when I say Yale Street. So he gets off the phone. No, I think he told me to, it's anyway, a little bit of a blur. I think it doesn't matter. Anyway, he told me to go over to the restaurant, get order a Coke or something, and he'd get back to me after his phone call. So he comes back to me and he goes, George is leaving. And now my jaw drops. George is leaving. So I couldn't believe it. I said, "You want me to pastor George's church?" He said, "Yep. I'm waiting for a reply from somebody. They said they'd call me back in a half an hour. I told them to pray about it. So they called back and they said, nope, not taking it. And all of a sudden the church is mine." So sometimes your calling may not be anything remotely in your mind that you might do. God may kick you in the pants and slap you across the face and say, this is what you're going to do. Wrap this up. A couple of things I want to say about this whole adventure with Yale Street, that it was hard. It was hard. From where I was to being a pastor was difficult. Still wasn't all that good with people. I often said if anybody was to be a pastor, it should be my wife. She's great with people, gets along with people, gets along with everybody. Me, it was kind of hard. But God had something in mind. God had some molding and shaping to do. Was I called to be the pastor of Yale Street Church? In a certain sense, no. No. I was called to be shaped and molded by people and a position. If that's a calling, so be it. Was I called to be in that position? Kind of no. So it turns out that I did have a good time there, though. It was difficult, but I had a great time in that one of my former passions was revived, and that was surfing. The kids, 25 and 30, 25 and so years old, 20, 25. There are 3 of them that wanted to surf. Stephen Fernandez, Jack Mefford, and Martin Gaeta. They were into surfing, and so I said, I used to surf, so I decided I'll go surfing with them. I had a really nice surfboard. My wife had encouraged me to buy. There you go, my wife getting involved in my calling again. She said, yeah, go ahead, buy it. It was only, I think it was at the time, it was $1,000 or something. That was a lot of money for us at that time. So we started going surfing. And it turns out that I was a lot better surfer than I was a preacher. I had found my calling, going surfing with the people in the church. And they were literally about the only people in the church, including my family and other families. We kind of averaged 12, 15 a week. God was gracious. God was good. God pointed out yet another calling in my life, and that was to go surfing. One more story, and then I'll call it quits. And this kind of confirmed the whole pastor of recreation calling in my life. One of the guys that I used to go surfing with at the church at Yale Street was Steve Fernandez. So we used to get together on the weekends and go surfing and maybe do some other stuff. So got up, and I think I had two of them in tow, maybe Martin and Steven. And the first thing, we got together, and maybe it was planned the night before or whatever, but anyway, the plan was we were going to go play golf at a little 9-hole course. Lots of fun, little 9-hole course. We're going to do that first thing in the morning, get up early and do that. Then after we finished golfing, we were going to go surfing. And after we finished surfing, we were going to go to the speedway races. It's a motorcycle race, a little short track oval down in Costa Mesa. Well, we did all three things, and we had a great time. And it wasn't until a year or two later, Stephen Fernandez comes up. He's got, I think he had one kid at the time, and now he's a pastor of a church up in Apple Valley. But it was maybe a year later or so after we did this weekend fling in sports, and he comes up and he goes, Pastor Rob, Pastor Mike, that was the best day of my life. I couldn't believe it. I mean, following my passion, following what I thought was my calling. Let's go out and have fun. Let's have an adventure. Steve Fernandez comes up and says, man, that was the best day of my life. And he's repeated that a few times, and I never forgot that, and I've told people that story several times. Best day of my life. That's where your passion, your calling can lead you to, is the best day of your life. Come to Lighthouse Gap University. Discover your passion, discover your calling. There's lots of people here that can help you find your calling. We can teach you, I can teach you to fly, I can't give you a license, but I can certainly introduce you to it. My son Tex can teach you to fly. I'll introduce you to gliders and soaring. I'll introduce you to the bicycle. You've heard the other testimonies. Hopefully, those people can introduce you to the things that they're passionate about. There's very little that we can't help you with. Come and check us out. Pastor Rob, do you have anything to say?
Well done, Mike.
Well done, Mike. Join us again tomorrow.